Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about holistic lifestyle, nervous system, health coaching, how to find your value. I mean, we talk about almost everything you need to do to get started to a better life today. I have a wonderful guest, Brittany Cano. She's going to be helping us understand her work, her experience, because she was actually a nurse working in the hospital. We can see firsthand the value of life. Because when you are in that hospital, maybe you're fighting for your life, you have to ask yourself, am I going to make a change after this, right? People might go in for stress, or they go in because they have a heart attack, or there's an accident, and they have to figure out how they can heal from that. And though that healing journey is there, some people are not going to take it. Some people are going to say, let me join the pity party parade. And they're going to be there and they're going to say, well, boo-hoo, this is my life. But yet there's an alternative for those individuals. So this episode is not only for the people who are sick, it's not only for the people who have gone through hardship, but for everyone who wants a better life, for everyone who wants to make something out of their life if they're not happy where they are. If they're struggling, if they're finding that they have negative or pessimistic thoughts or ideals, this episode is going to be to help you adjust and align to who you truly want to be. And you might be in a really good place because you're listening to the podcast, you're getting all the mindset coaching and all the mindset training that you need to make the changes and adjustments in your life. But maybe you know somebody. Maybe you know someone who's not in a really good place. Maybe you know someone who had an accident, life-changing. Maybe it wasn't that they were in the accident, but a family member was, and it's life-changing. This episode is going to be for you to share with them, because what we're trying to do is to bring awareness into people's lives that they can do wonderful things. Sometimes they just have to break the pattern. Sometimes they just have to create some awareness. Sometimes they have to interrupt the madness that they're dealing with. And that could be your mind. So let's get into that interview with Brittany Cano and myself and begin to understand how we can start to change our life and start to live more fully. Welcome, Brittany Cano, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for coming on. I can already tell today we're going to have a fun episode full of energy, and it's important that we have that energy because you are a holistic nurse coach. We're going to be learning about your work. We want to have as much information from you as we can in this episode because I know people are hungry to learn about your position and how you help the world. In your own words, can you tell the world who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Brittany Cano, and I'm really passionate about supporting people and living their best life and really prioritizing their health. There's always layers to that. And so helping them and making it as easy, simple, and effective and as sustainable as possible.
When we look at someone's life, why is it not simple right now?
There's so many things to make it not simple. There's so many outside influences. We have our past experiences. I'm of the belief that we also, really in science-based, that we carry things from our ancestors, right, on a cellular level. So there's lots of ways in which it's not simple. And I also find that we are getting further and further away from those simple practices, that simple way of living, which therefore complicates life even more. We're like getting away, I feel like, from the necessities in some ways. And so when we don't have a strong foundation in life, it makes things even more complicated.
When you say strong foundation, is it our parents? Is it our ancestors? Is it society? What does that foundation mean to you?
It can be a lot of things. It can be all of those things. For me, it's like, what do I have control over? What can I do to create that strong foundation for myself? Like what are the things I can do to take care of my well-being? And I think a lot of times we can lose sight of that. Like life is throwing all kinds of things our direction. And so a strong foundation is getting back to ourselves, getting back to what do I need to be okay right now? What do I really need? And even starting with like in this moment, what do I really need right now? Because so much of the time we're even disconnected from that. And coming back to our hearts, coming back to our morals, our values, because it's so easy to lose sight of what matters most to us. We live in a society where it's like everything outside of us is the answer, and everything of outside of us is everything that we need, right? We're kind of programmed for that. And so a strong foundation would be coming back to what is really important to me? What are my values? How do I take care of myself? And then expanding from that, how do I take care of my family, right? How do I take care of my unit? And then how do I contribute to society? And so I think if we don't have clarity on those things, then it affects everything else in our life. And then from like a physical or health standpoint, a lot of humans, we live in that survival mode from past traumas, from all of the complicated things that are happening in the world. So a lot of the work I do is around nervous system regulation. So if somebody's not familiar with the nervous system, just think of it as like everything that has to do with our mind. It affects all of our organs, the operating system in our body. And so if we're in a fight, flight, or freeze majority of the time, that's going to cause also an imbalance. So getting that back online as much as possible. So doing the things we get to do to work through, traumas, doing the things that we get to do to take care of our health. And look, like nobody's going to be perfect, right? There's no perfect formula, but coming back to taking care of ourselves so that we can show up and be a contributing person in society. Because we want to change the world so much of the time, but if we're a hot mess inside, that's a good place to start.
Exactly. You brought up so many great points. I do want to break it down for people to start to take actionable steps, because that was definitely something that can be daunting to some people. Like, oh man, I got to do this, got to change my nervous system.
Yeah, let's make it simple.
Let's look at values, right? What are healthy values that a person can have to start to change some of their past traumas, past issues, maybe even bad habits that are causing them to freeze today?
That's a great question. So everybody's going to have different values, right? Everyone is going to have different values. And I'll give like some examples of values just so people feel like, I don't even know what my values are. So for some people, it's family. Other people, it's impact or influence, community, spirituality, health. For some people, it is their work, it's service, it's enjoyment, pleasure, nature, right? All of these things can be things that we really kind of live by. Freedom, authentic expression. So when it comes to having values that help us get out of a trauma response, I think that's really going to be unique to individuals, and one that might kind of be a foundation is like well-being or health, right? Like peace could be another one. So thinking of like through that lens of like, how do I create well-being in my relationships, right? If well-being was your value, how do I create well-being in my physical health? And starting with really simple actions. So for somebody who, let's say, trauma, I think of trauma, it's not always in relationship to another person, right? But it can be in relationship to other people. Like, how do I create well-being in the relationships around me? So it's important to feel safe before we go and do that healing work, right? Before we even go to address the trauma, we need to feel safe in the present moment. So safety might even be a value. I know for me, like feeling a sense of security really is high on my value list. Like I need to feel safe and I need to feel secure. It's very important to me. Some people are like, I don't care. Like throw me off a freaking out of an airplane and let's go for it. And like, I'll take, like some people really thrive on the adrenaline of adventure, and adventure is their top, value. But for me, safety and security, anytime we're going to start unpacking any kind of trauma, is a foundational thing that we need to aim for.
You're right. We all have different unique values, and it's important that, I don't mean to plug so soon. It's important that you get a coach, you get someone who can help you navigate through that, especially if you are not so much confused. Because even in my relationships that I have, I look at the values to each of those individuals, because we can go all the way just looking at your partner and seeing what type of values they have. And if you have values that don't align, there's a lot of discrepancies that form in the relationships. For example, I want to have kids. I want to start a family, but the other person doesn't. That's going to be...
family may not be important to them. That may be low on their list.
And so we have to look at values as almost like our momentum or our motivation, whatever you want to see it as. It's almost like the start. And it's one of the reasons why I led off with that question, because when you can give yourself a value of maybe health, you want to be healthy. Why do you want to be healthy? Well, I want to be healthy because I want to be able to chase my kids, or I want to be able to chase my grandkids, or I want to be able to walk up the stairs and not need assistance like my dad or my mom. And so we give ourselves those values, and the work that you do is helping people look at not only those values, but look at their body, look at things that might be stopping them along the way to, them achieving a better health. And I wanted to get into the conversation now of that nervous system where we're looking at, okay, this is who I am. Does it have to be who they stay?
I love that question. And I'm a believer, no, right? Like healing is going to health is going to look different for every single person. So I really want to be cognizant of that when I say that, right? Because everyone's healing journey is going to look different, right? Everyone's going through their own. So first of all, not to compare with somebody else. Second of all, like we have that ability. Our body wants to heal. I worked in ICU for years. I would have patients that there's no way I would have thought that they would survive. After a while, I realized like I don't ever really, so much of the time, I don't really necessarily know because people surprise the crap out of you, would surprise the crap out of me and they will live. Like it just goes to show that like the human body wants to live. It wants to survive. It wants to overcome. And there are ways that we can support our nervous system. So like I was saying, I see a lot of people we're in that fight, flight, or freeze. Like we're always on the go. We're always like in action, getting things done. And while that's important, we also need to be able to have the other side about that parasympathetic nervous system and have practices that really ground us, that slow us down, that allow us just to be and hang out and to rest, to breathe. And so having a balance between those two is so important. And having that balance is a starting ground for creating that internal safety. I believe for a majority of people, that is accessible, right? Certain people, let's say spinal cord injuries that are severed off, like it's going to look different, right? But for a lot of us, we do have that ability. Some of us are going to always have a more sensitive nervous system, right? We've experienced a ton of trauma. We've experienced a ton of trauma in life. And there's layers to your healing. Even if you're like super healthy listening to this, like there's another layer of healing and well-being. And then the same thing if you're like, man, I don't think I can get through what I'm going through. Like I've been through so much you don't understand, Brittany. That's really what got me into this work is because I felt like that. I'm like, I'm running around in circles. I don't know how to break this cycle. Like I don't really have a lot of examples around me on how to break this cycle. And then once I realized like, oh, we can interrupt the madness and create a life that's really aligned by our values, aligned in love and like really feels good. I'm like, everybody needs to know this. Like, because I carried so much shame personally. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. They're like, I can't even change. I can't change this. And I just want to encourage people that we can, right? When there's a will, there's a way so much of the time.
I love the saying, interrupt the madness. And I want to tie it in with limitations. As you said, when people were coming into that ICU and you're like, oh, this person's not going to make it. And surprisingly, they pulled through. We sometimes might listen to a doctor's advice, nurse's advice, or something like that. And it goes against maybe our value of life or our purpose to, hey, we need to still do something. And we give ourselves a bigger mission, even though it might be a measure of fate, test of courage, whatever you have to go through, you go through it. Think of people who fight cancer, people who were in horrific car accidents, and doctors come up saying, you'll probably never walk again. And the person's like, oh, I'm going to walk. And they basically say, F the statistics, F your logic. I'm going to do what I want to do. And the brain or the mind supersedes what is maybe common knowledge. I was reading a book. I forget the name of the book, but it was a doctor actually looking at patients who overcame the odds of what most doctors would say. Like, you won't be able to walk again. You won't be able to see, or you won't be able to do this. And so the doctor started to do research on all the situations. And basically what he was saying is encouraging doctors to say, we know the statistics, but we don't know their human mind and their potential. And so that's a factor that is up to the individual. So yes, something tragic can happen in their life, but it is up to the individual in the end. When we look at the limitations of our body, the limitations of what is given to us from others, society, whatever it be, that madness, as you said, right? Interrupting that madness. How can we start to look at our potential rather than what is the standard for everyone else?
I think it starts with awareness, right? Realizing that there is that option to not be that statistic, right? I don't have to necessarily, this doesn't necessarily have to be true for me. Like, God, such a good question.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. It really is. Because in certain situations, things are going to be that way. And then certain situations are not. So it really comes back to being our own, like the agent of our own life and like defining how we're going to live. And even if like that means having that diagnosis, then realizing we have the ability to choose how we go through that journey, right? That is something that we have the option of so much of the time is how am I going to go through this journey? And there is so much power in that. Like you said, people who they say are never going to walk again, they do walk again, right? And I've seen that in the hospital. They're like brain dead, pull the ventilator and let's donate these organs. I mean, and the family says, no, they're 24. Let's see what happens. And 72 hours later, they're starting to have brain function. And occasionally those people actually go home and have quality of life. So it really is something that I think is so much greater than us too, a lot of times. And the mind is so powerful, right? But what we tell ourselves is so powerful. And to go back to what you said about the doctors or nurses, if somebody is diagnosed with something, it's so important that we have providers who believe in us getting well, because I've done research that supports our outcomes. So if you're going to somebody who's like, this is your diagnosis, you're going to be sick forever, you're not going to get better, right? And they're like, yeah, no, you're not getting better. Even if you're like, no, I am going to get better. I would suggest find somebody who believes that you can get better, like who believes in you being able to manage this disease or whatever it is, if we're talking about being sick. And our mind does play, mind is huge. Mind is huge. And then if, let's say physically, we don't overcome what we're going through, we do still have the ability to find that acceptance and that peace within our mind and our spirit, which I think is one of the most challenging things, right? When our body's not doing what we think it should do or how it should be. But again, we still have that ability to have healing on that level.
And the reason I asked that question, I know it was a very difficult question to answer because it could be unique to everyone's situation, was because you said, Brittany, you don't know my situation. Well, of course we don't know your situation. But yet many people, they have that mindset of their situation is I'm the victim here. So we look at if we are the victim and there's no way out of this, we're going to have that mentality of we can't get better or poor me, right? You should feel bad for me. And it's hard for a person to be in a positive state or an optimistic state of mind when they have that victim type mentality. Is your work helping people get out of that victim type of mentality, or is it more just understanding about your body and its capabilities?
I was going to like get out of the victim mentality, right? And from a place of self-compassion, because that's a huge part of that, right? I feel like when we find out, oh my gosh, I've been living like a victim. I've been there. I still fall into that victim mindset at times. We can shame ourselves, right? So remembering that being in a victim mindset, I would imagine most humans experience that. That's a part of self-compassion, remembering that like, oh, this is part of the human condition that I'm going to go into this state at times and being like mindful around it, not to get so identified with like, oh my gosh, I was acting like a victim, and then to be kind to ourselves so that we can pull ourselves out of that. And, of course, there's so many ways, right? Like, who's to say my way is right? And I love the idea of like, we get to choose, we get to be the author of our lives rather than the victim of like, all of these things happen to me. To me, it feels so much better. And I find the people that I work with, when they're able to say, oh, wait, what can I choose out of this situation? how can I empower myself with this situation? How can I look at this as working for me instead of against me? They live a much more fulfilling quality of life as opposed to like, this happened to me, that happened to me. Everybody does this to me, right? Like when we can say, okay, this is showing up in my life. What's the lesson here? Sometimes we won't find a lesson. There are times we won't find a lesson, but yeah, like what is the lesson here? What is this showing me about myself? What am I learning? How can I use this to make my life better? And sometimes we may not find that, but if we can have that approach a majority of the time, it enriches life so much more. And I feel like quality of life is so much better.
I want to ask a question because as someone who sees life end or have, like saw life end and life begin, what is the meaning of life?
I think again, that's what like depends on the individual. But for me, the meaning of life is to learn, to grow, to connect, and to really like dissolve the things that block me from love. Right. To me, like coming back to that true like spirit and making an impact. And like to me, that's the meaning of life. Right. And remembering that it's temporary and that our journey here in the physical plane, at least, is temporary and it's fast. And so, how do I want to live my life? And coming back to that on a regular daily basis, because again, there's all those things that will distract us from that.
There's two known facts about life. We're all born and we all die. But life, the thing that happens in between, it's not guaranteed because many people, they just kind of go with the flow, the ebb and flow of the world. They go wherever they're pushed or wherever they're pulled. And they just think about, okay, well, what's next? But yet they're not looking for meaning. They're not looking for purpose. And then they find themselves extremely unhappy. They find themselves in a situation where they're like, what's the point? Those people, right? Life is there for them to attain, but yet they don't grab it. When we look at people trying to get into better health, a better body, a better mind, it doesn't matter which one, they choose not to take action. How can we start to help people take more action to get into the state of living life for what you want your values to be, for what you want to attain, for what you want to feel? Because many people, as I said, they're in a very negative mindset. They're suffering, but yet they don't want to pull themselves out of it.
Yeah, I think about this all the time, honestly. Like, because if you feel decent, it's easier to make these changes, right? There's not as big of a mountain to climb, even though there's still a mountain to climb. But if you're like stuck under quicksand, like, and you're like, get to the top of that mountain, you're like, I can't even get out of this quicksand. Like, I can't even breathe down here, right? Like, I'm barely making it. So, with that, wow. Like, I don't have all the answers to that. And I do, like, I grew up with people very depressed, very anxious, like, dealt with that myself. And so I want to think back to, like, what do I see that supports the people in my life who deal with, like, chronic depression? And what supported me when I had chronic depression, myself, and anxiety? For me, it was like the little things, right? Really, if I can focus my mind to be grateful, right? We know gratitude is healing. It has it's a healing vibration. It's great for the mind. It's also great for the body. If I can be grateful that today I got up and fed my dog and walked and got the mail, right? Like, and feel good about that. Today I sat outside in the sun for 15 minutes, right? If we can find the gratitude and try to find the appreciation in those things, and then trying to take care of our basic needs. And for people that are feeling really, they're really like, I'm not even in any place to make changes. Cause that's true, right? If we're purely in survival, it's not even like to make real big changes. And like, let's say get into an exercise routine. That's like an afterthought, right? Or we're not even, our basic needs aren't being met. So we need to see like, what can I do to meet my basic needs? Some people will make out a like plan, right? If they know that they struggle from chronic depression or, debilitating mental illness, or they have exacerbations of their disease so that the people in their life can support them. And for some people, they don't have that, right? They don't have a strong support system to help them. So I would say in those cases too, like the internet's great for that, right? Find a supporting community online, like do those things that may seem like they don't make any difference and celebrate them, right? Because they are. When we're down and like we're not in a place, we're in a negative mindset, like doing anything feels like a ton of work. And we also a lot of times just beat ourselves up over it or it's not enough. So it's like starting to slowly change our mind and know that, change is gradual. It's a gradual process.
What is a success story that you think of sometimes in your life that you're like, whoa, I helped this person do this?
Oh, I have a client. So when she came to me, she was having panic attacks regularly. Panic attacks so often. Awesome lady. Like, I love this woman. And so we did a lot of like the nervous system regulation together, a lot of the coaching, right? Looking at the mindset, looking at what thoughts, what kind of other things in the life, what kind of physical things could be leading to, because everything, from that holistic model, all of these things, right, have an impact on our well-being. And so now she's in a place where she's not having panic attacks. She feels like she's able to work with her anxiety. She still has anxiety, but she's able to work with her anxiety. She has a little 3-year-old girl, so it's like had a really positive effect on her mothering as well. And it started like rippling to her husband as well. Like he's more open to trying these things like, meditation or breathing or going for a walk, whereas before, that wasn't really something that he was interested in. So I love that it has a positive ripple effect in that she's able to not be in the ER all the time with panic attacks. When you have a panic attack, your body's hijacking you. And now because she's able to understand what she needs and able to work with her body and has these practices, she's not having panic attacks and she's able to do things that support her mental health and physical health.
And without going too much into like her, because she might have a very personal story, but what was the prompt or what is the prompt you find when you're working with clients that they do have these bouts of anxieties, fears, panic attacks?
It's different for everybody. It really what's really fueling their anxiety, but I think it comes down to a lot of times like that I'm not enoughness and that worthiness, our initial like programming a lot of times that we all received when we were younger. And for some people, it's like the lifestyle. Like you look at their lifestyle, they're working 80 hours a week, like they're just like living a very fast paced lifestyle. And so their body's like hijacked by this constant cortisol and adrenaline rush. And that's contributing to the anxiety. And we get in our belief system, right? These stories that we tell each other, right? Or tell ourselves, they like take over our mind. And then when those toxic thoughts have a biochemical response, like our body releases hormones that, when left unchecked, lead to anxiety, can lead to panic attacks.
When I was looking at stress has a huge role on the nervous system. It's like if you're stressed out, you're more likely to get sick, you're more likely to be unhappy, you're more likely to make poor choices. So, for example, the salad or the hamburger, which one are you going to choose?
Yeah, you're
Well,
like, oh, that's why. Yeah.
and so we look at stress or self-love or self-care, whatever you want. I mean, vaguely just looking at those terms, we look at, okay, how can I feel better? How can I not be stressed anymore? So people, they do wrong things. And I'm not saying it's wrong to eat ice cream, but if you're using it as the coping mechanism to feel better, it's going to lead to weight gain. It's going to lead to you not being able to regulate yourself because you always need the ice cream to do the job for you. It's that ebb and flow of self-destruction. We need to learn how to build ourselves up when we get into those states of anxiety, of stress, of high stress. We need to look at the things that are more beneficial, as you said, meditation, grounding ourselves, becoming aware, being grateful for those small things. That's going to have a better effect on us. But yet, many people, they choose the form, they choose the bad stuff, they choose the quick fixes. Why do you think everyone is so readily available for the quick fix, the drug?
The
Because,
dopamine hit.
yeah, the dopamine
Right, the
hit.
dopamine hit, our brain's like pleasure, 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 or avoid pain, avoid pain. So I think understanding that about the human mind, like the mind, like we want pleasure, we want to avoid pain, like that's automatic. So it starts with, again, like that awareness. We have to be aware that there's a problem, that that's not healthy, that that's a negative thing. And then so much of healing is that pattern interruption. Like I've had super toxic habits in my life. Like I became aware of them. And then it was like I needed to have that, we want to have that willingness to do something about it. And then interrupting the pattern over and over and over again. And some of the ways that we can do that is like having people around us that are supportive, removing the things in our environment, really doing that inner work of like, what led me down this path to begin with? Like, what do I need to like work through whatever it is it's causing me to always go and get drunk, right? Like there's something there. And if we could just start to play detective and keep interrupting those toxic habits in combination with like deep breathing. Well, that's a really easy thing that, listeners can take away from them is like our breathing can help regulate our nervous system. So if we're breathing all shallow with our shoulders up like earrings, we're going to be like feeling that tension as opposed to we can drop them down, relax the jaw, breathe down into the belly, a big inhale, and let your out breath be longer than the inhale. So the out breath is longer and do like 3 to 5 of those 3 times a day just as a beginning practice. That's huge, right? It's also going to help get us connected to ourselves, bring us back into the present moment because so much of the time we're in the past, we're in the future, and start to self-regulate, right? And then bring in that awareness and that pattern interruption.
It's amazing how we can be in that mindset of consciousness or the unconscious where we just do these things and we're not aware. I think you're spot on when it comes to we need to have these pattern disruptors in our life, whatever that may be. For me, it was getting a coach. It was getting someone to
Me too.
help me to say, hey, look at this. It's because sometimes those patterns, they become so habitual, they become so common in our life, we forget that they're there or we fail to see them.
Yes.
They become our blind spots. And so that's why I love coaching. I love the work that you do because it is helping people understand their blind spots. It's helping people get through them and navigating them and saying, this could be a healthier option than what you're doing right now.
Yeah, and I always say there's like 8 billion people or however many people in the world. We are not meant to do this journey alone. Like there is somebody out there who can support you and guide you through this, and it's going to make a world of difference, right? Like coaching changed my life. I didn't even know it was a thing. Now it's so, probably everybody is a coach and has a coach for train your acne, whatever, right? There's coaches for everything. But like life changing. And I can't I love coaching, as I'm sure you do too, right? Having that mentorship, having that support makes a world of difference.
When I was a teacher, I saw firsthand the students that were coming out full of stress, full of anxiety, full of limiting beliefs. And I said, oh my God, it's not so much of the teacher's job. It's not so much of the parent's job. It's going to be the individual's jobs, the adult's jobs now at this point to fix it. And they're going to need people. And I said, when I wanted to create an impact in the world, I said, what can I do? And that's why I left teaching and became a coach instead, because I saw it firsthand what was coming out of the school system. And if we see it, it's going to keep on happening. There needs to be more coaches. There needs to be more people reaching out to people so they can get back on track.
Yeah. And like remind us of our self-agency, right? Remind us that, oh, wait, I can be my own healer. I can create the life that I really want. I can actually shift my situation. This situation doesn't have to define me and control me and be like the rest of my life. Because so much of the time we're repeating our past over and over and over and over again. And coaching allows us to interrupt that. And that's so cool, though, that you saw that need. That was the same thing with healthcare. It was like, there's definitely, we can shift this. And how powerful is that? Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And this is a powerful conversation for many people to begin to take action. And it's just the tippy top of the iceberg here, because what we talked about is looking at your life, maybe areas that you might need some help, some assistance in, and how to begin that process. It might begin with a small step, but the big step is going to be a changed life for you, maybe a life that you might have never thought you could have. Think of being able to walk again. I'm sure if you are in a situation where doctors have told you that you can't do something, do you challenge it? Are you in a position where people look down on you, belittle you? Do you challenge that? And let this conversation today be the catalyst for you to challenge the limitations in your life to challenge how you feel today. Because if you're not in a good state of feeling, good state of mind, you can make the changes. And I think Brittany is right on track with helping you get to that lifestyle that you're looking for. As we begin to wrap up, Brittany, I would love to get some final words and then for you to tell the audience where they can find you.
Yes, I would love to just remind people that we have that ability to self-soothe, self-regulate, create that inner calm. And it's really a superpower. When we're living life from that place of reaction, right? Like we're like destructive in a lot of ways. They're on the path of sabotage. So we have that ability to interrupt that and come from that place of choice, at least a majority of the time, and make choices that support our highest good, that empower us. And it just starts one choice at a time. That's really how change happens. One moment at a time. It's never too late to start. I really appreciate the questions that you asked me. They're so, so deep and so insightful. Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. And for listeners, if what we talked about, you'd like to learn more, you can visit my website. It's holisticnursecoaches.com. And then from there, you can either set up a consult with me. You can get on my list and get a free something. It's called Emotional Freedom Technique. So it's a great tool for stress relief and for connecting the mind, body, and emotions. And then from there, you can find all my social media as well.
Perfect. And I'll make it easy for everyone. All the links could be in the description box below.
Perfect. Thank you.
So you don't have to worry about them spelling your name wrong or not being able to find you. It's going to be right there. Everyone check out Brittany. She's going to be the catalyst, as I said earlier, to jumpstart the new life that you're looking to have. We all want something more in our life, and we might need to have a mentor or coach help us along the way. And I think
bring
Brittany,
that curiosity, right?
Oh,
bring the
of course.
curiosity. Like, what could it be like? What would it be like to walk again? What do I got to do? What's possible?
Challenge the unexpected is what I want to leave you with, because we don't know what this life can bring, but what I can tell you is that you can do amazing things in your life. I want to thank you so much, Brittany, for coming on, spending some time with us, and talking about your work. All right, everyone, I would like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Brittany Cano and myself. As you can see, Brittany is well versed in so many situations. Being a nurse, especially like in the ICU and just going through that practice, you learn so much. I remember when my grandmother, she took us to a restaurant after church one day, and my cousin was with us, and she was probably like 3, maybe 4 years old, and she's munching on some ice cubes. And sure enough, she swallows the ice cubes and starts choking. Now, eventually, of course, the ice cube will melt, but my grandma immediately just says, uh-oh, picks her up, starts giving her like the Heimlich for kids, and then the ice cube pops out. Not a problem. But what's amazing is she says after, she goes, oh, little missy, you gave us a scare there. But yet her face, her demeanor was confident. She was skilled. And I can feel that same thing with Brittany. When you have a skill and you just have been repetitive at it and you are good at it, it's almost second nature to you. Saving a life, helping someone achieve something that they're struggling with. That is skill. When we're trying to find the people in our life, Brittany said it the best. We have 8 billion people in this world or thereabouts. We don't necessarily have to fight every battle by ourselves. We are not a desert island. We are not a lone ranger. I understand movies might make it sound really good, but we are people that are community-based or should be community-based. Your community might not necessarily be your neighbor next door. It could be someone that you listen to on a podcast or someone you work with across the country or maybe even across the world. It doesn't necessarily matter where you find an individual as long as you find people who are trying to help you be in a better position, better mindset, because our world can be extremely negative. I mean, you turn on the news, you're going to be hit with so many things that are going to cause you stress, cause you anxiety, cause you to say, you know what, what's the point? Well, the point is your life's at stake and not so much of you living and dying, but creating meaning, creating purpose, finding the values that you want to instill in the world and to others that you are going to interact with on a consistent daily basis maybe. Your family, they might not say it, but they want to see you in a better position. Your friends, the same thing. But yet sometimes those mindsets and those ideals can become clouded by the accolades, by the things that don't matter as much. And we might do the wrong things because of it. We might say, you know what, I'm just going to do this, and maybe you do that, and maybe that is not necessarily good. And what's this and that is going to be unique to you. Maybe you're watching TV all the time. Maybe you're eating pizza every evening or going to fast food spots after work every day. Sometimes you just have to create the habits that you need versus the habits that you have already built. So we do have to break the patterns, as we said in the episode. We do have to restructure our mindset. We do have to apply some awareness, some discipline. And by breathing, I mean, that can be this place where you begin today. I always like to give people, well, where do you begin today? Maybe it's reaching out to Brittany saying, I'm ready for a big change in my life. Maybe it's just saying, let me learn how to breathe. Let me learn how to feel my breath. Let me breathe in. Let me breathe out. And when you feel that breath, start to just give a little bit more awareness to when you're breathing. I know you probably sometimes think about blinking. You're like, uh-oh, now I'm thinking about blinking. And now I can't stop thinking about blinking, right? Something that was automatic is now in your mind. Breathing, feeling hungry, feeling thirsty, blinking, thinking. All of those things can be automatic sometimes. We think about 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. Some of those are going to be good. Some of those are not going to be good. Some of those you're going to apply a lot of consciousness to, and some of those you're going to barely even think about. But yet they're thoughts. And we can make our thoughts, all of those thoughts, more pinpointed into what we want to accomplish. Instead of worrying about things like, how am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to do this? How am I going to show up? We begin where we are. Maybe it's, how can I start to become more aware of myself? How can I become more centered? How can I start to look at my life for the good things rather than the things that are just happening to me or at me? It can be difficult to get out of depression. It can be difficult to get out of a situation, especially if you have to do a tremendous amount of healing and work. But what I can tell you is that you're going to one day accomplish that. You just have to decide, is today going to be the day? Or is maybe another day going to be the day? And it's that aspect of one day or day one. You might say one day I'll feel better, or today is going to be day one of me feeling better. Create that awareness. The mindset is amazing because your mindset affects the nervous system. So if you're thinking in a positive manner, everything else starts to change. If you're weighed down with stress and anxiety, your body's going to start to gain weight more easily or get sick more easily. I mean, there has been so much scientific research and studies on this same thing. So you might find that you're just struggling in many aspects of your life. I encourage you still to reach out to Brittany. Begin to look at your life for what it truly can be rather than what it is today. It might be a journey, but you can make that journey epic. So go on a journey with Brittany. Check us out at revenconcepts.com. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear a success story that you had in your life, maybe from how you once came from a negative mindset or a negative situation, negative habits or poor habits, and you started to make those changes. We love to hear success stories. It doesn't have to be of us. It can just be in your own life. Feel proud about those moments because when you do it once, you can do it again. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I'll see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.